how much have I learnt in that time? So much. I've connected with amazing people. Even you and I have made an amazing
Yeah.
connection today.
Yeah.
And it's like, how valuable is that? That's just gold. So push through that imposter syndrome, because you never know what's on the other side. And it could
No.
be a game changer, life changer.
This is Inspired Founders, a podcast that helps you find your true north in business and beyond. I'm Priscilla Skippington, a soul-led entrepreneur passionate about sharing the wisdom of world-leading business minds who have walked the path before us. From their toughest challenges to their greatest triumphs, we explore the stories that have shaped their journey and defined their future. Together, we discover the resilience and redemption it truly takes to achieve success, make a lasting impact on the world, and live a life that is truly fulfilling. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Inspired Founders with me, Priscilla Skippington. And today we have an incredible founder joining us. Meet Elizabeth Formosa, the visionary founder of Fashion Equipped. Since 2012, she's been revolutionizing the Australian fashion industry with her deep expertise and passion for entrepreneurship. Through consulting, mentorship, and online learning, Elizabeth empowers hundreds of business owners each year and through her vibrant community as well. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Oh, thank you, Priscilla. What a beautiful introduction. I'm so excited to be here.
We were having a little chat just before we jumped on and realized how much synergy we have between us and common passions for business, for life, for in the creative space. But before we dive into all the questions, I'd love to know a little bit more about your story and kind of how Fashion Equipped came to be what it is today.
It's quite the journey. I've got to wind the clock back a little bit and kind of delve into the archives. But yeah, I launched Fashion Equipped back in 2012. So it's been quite a few years now in the consulting space. But yeah, back in 2012, I saw a gap in the market. I think, like many good businesses, it's like, okay, there's something that I know people need that's not readily available. And it was certainly a different time back in 2012. There were not many business consultants in our industry. And at that time, I'd already been in the industry, like deeply immersed in the industry for over 18 years. So I had a little bit of experience under my belt, like right across the industry, you know, in fashion, but also outside of fashion, in activewear and women's wear, men's wear, kids wear. It was pretty diverse. And it was across, I was trained as a retail buyer. So I was in retail buying for many, many years. So that was my grounding in the industry. But I also worked in wholesale, and I owned and run my own wholesale business. So I was very much living that corporate fashion life, you know, working for leading retailers, leading wholesalers in the industry. I was doing a lot of travel. So as a retail buyer, it's pretty much a rite of passage that you are traveling on a consistent basis. And typically doing all of the business things combined with travel, combined with operating at a very high level for a long period of time, typically will equal burnout at some point in time. And I think, you know, many of us, I think entrepreneurs face that several times during our journey. So I was certainly facing it at that time where I was inspired to do something different. I thought to myself, you know, I've kind of touched every area of the industry. So I was looking for something new. I did not know what that was. And through, you know, serendipity, I ended up doing some guest lecturing at Melbourne School of Fashion.
Cool.
And did not see myself as an educator or a teacher. But who knew? Who knew? I perhaps missed my calling in the early days. So while I was...
You're good at talking and presenting, so, you know.
Well, it was a bit different back then. I was probably a trembling little cat, to be honest, standing up in front of a class trying to be this teacher. But I think it just kind of poured out of me. Like everything I had learnt over that journey to date was kind of just pouring out of me. And because I was having to create the lectures before delivering the lectures, I was kind of just streaming all of this information. So I guess I had an aha moment that, okay, I've acquired a lot of knowledge and there seems to be an audience that's really hungry to take all of this information on. So outside of the education piece, I realised there was a gap in the market for consulting. So
Yeah.
established business owners and emerging business owners, brands and emerging designers that
Mm,
needed assistance, in particular on the business side of fashion. So, they
yeah.
might have been amazing creatives. They may even have had a really amazing entrepreneurial spirit, but they were lacking that business, those sound, practical kind of business skills. And I
Yeah.
think, many retail buyers have a good balance of creative because you're developing product and you're immersed in product, all day, every day. But
Yeah.
you've also got to get the numbers right because if you don't sell through that product, then you're not doing your job. So you're very much judged on the sell through of products. So you've got to get the analytics right and you've got to know your numbers. So I think that was
Yeah.
something that became a superpower of mine. It was like I could speak to an emerging designer that was a pure creative and calibrate to their vision, what they wanted to do. And then I
Mm,
could be sitting with, a $50 million business owner that wanted to launch a new brand or diversify their supply chain or whatever it might be, whatever project was on the radar. And they wanted people that were outside of their business to come in with
mm,
fresh eyes. And I think that's the superpower of any consultant is that you're coming into a business with fresh eyes.
yeah.
You're not, you haven't been conditioned to the way that business is trading. You're coming in with all of those new ideas, those new strategies. And I think that can be really powerful for a business owner or a leadership team in a business.
Yeah.
So I kind of came full circle. I was doing lectures for a little bit, and then I thought, okay, I think there's actually something here that I need to pursue. And so that's
Mhm.
how Fashion Equipped was created. It was through that spark of inspiration, seeing there was a gap. It
Yeah.
certainly didn't look like it looks today.
We all have to
I,
start somewhere.
I was doing house calls. I was literally doing house calls in the day. I was taking my little spiral bound booklet that was all about the business side of fashion. And I
Yeah.
was arriving at the door of the business owner, the brand, the designer, whether it was their home studio or their premises, their place of work. And I would
Yeah.
go in and we would do these, strategy sessions. And then I'd discover what was working, what wasn't, and how I could help them going forward. So that's how it all started, Priscilla.
I love that so much. So, like going back then, who were you talking to? Like, how were you finding these clients? Were they through like lecturing and at uni, or were they just coming to you? Like, how did it happen?
There was definitely word of mouth. So
Hmm.
when I was at the
Hmm.
uni, I think my colleagues in the industry were watching what I was doing with the guest lectures. Certainly, the leadership team at the university were watching what I was doing, and they were very well connected. And they always had requests. Can you help me with this? In
Yeah.
particular, one of the heads of the education department that I was working in, she was kind of the source of truth for industry. People would go to her and ask a question, and she'd be the equals button. And so all of a sudden, I was being offered up to, go into these businesses. So that's how it started. And then, of course,
Amazing.
created a brand, created a website, got onto social media, did all of the
Yeah.
things. But again, it took a long time to kind of fine tune the brand. It didn't look like it looks today, that's for sure.
No.
Sometimes I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, did I really give that booklet to someone? I don't even think, I had a copywriter in those days. So there was certainly a few typos in the materials and
Yeah.
all of the things that we do when we're starting out.
Yeah. But I think
But
that's a really important reminder, for our new founders coming through. It's like, it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't
no,
have to look like the grand vision that you have for yourself and for your future. It can just be what it has to be today to get started. And I think that's the biggest thing I've learned through business as well is like, just do the thing, just get started,
yeah,
just take the action. And then through that, you evolve and it's who you meet, right? It's the
yeah.
connections you have, it's the people you meet that things evolve quite naturally and organically if you stay on the path and keep showing up.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the key. You got to keep showing up. And I showed up. I showed up everywhere. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody now, but I said yes to everything. I was
I
like,
was the same.
you want me to
Yeah.
come and speak at, there was a place called the Brunswick Business Incubator, which was an old
Yes.
high school, which had been converted into a co-working business space. And there was a few fashion
Cool.
brands working out of there, and it was like a council business incubator, and they used to run workshops there. So they used to just market it, sell the tickets. The tickets were $25 each, right? And I thought, oh
Okay.
my God, people are paying $25 to see me come in and talk. And so I would rock up and there would be, 50 people in the audience. And I would just present, how do you start and scale a fashion business? It was as simple
Yeah.
as that. And through that, I was doing them, I was probably doing a couple every month. So, the audiences add up over time. And,
Yep.
talking about word of mouth and networking and connections, that creates a bit of a buzz.
It does. Yeah.
Whether that person in the audience is a client for today or they circle back to you. I've had so many people circle back saying, I saw you speak at this place
Yeah.
3 years ago or 5 years ago, and I've been
Yeah.
following you ever since, and now I'm ready to work with you.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think
I've had
showing
that
up.
too. It's wild, isn't it?
Yeah,
And it's just it's the connections you make and sometimes the connections you don't even know that you're making
yeah.
that turn out to be the most incredible ones. Yeah, I love that. So your career, like we've just spoken about, spans decades. Looking back, what has been the most pivotal moment or experience that's shaped you into now the mentor and the entrepreneur you are today? And I'm sure there's plenty, but like, is there one that stands out?
There are plenty. I think if I was to kind of look, high level looking down, it's definitely a culmination of
Mhm.
experiences, all rolled up into how I kind of show up today.
Mm.
But I think the reason I'm so passionate about entrepreneurship and mentorship is because I had amazing entrepreneurs and mentors around me in the
Yeah.
early days. My grounding in the industry, I think, was gold because when I look at the industry now, it's very different. My
Mm.
grounding in the industry, I was surrounded by amazing thought leaders. They were very entrepreneurial. I was in the buying industry, so
Yep.
we're talking about everyone around me. My portfolio back then was around 25 or 30 million dollars as like a young buyer. So think about the people around me, they were
Mm.
managing hundreds of millions of dollars in their buying portfolio. So
Such
they're
a
op-
big industry, isn't it? Like,
it's
yeah,
it's
huge.
huge. It's huge. And when, like, I think back now of, when I was sitting doing my little manual buying plan, because in those days the software was pretty, it was only just getting started. We had like a big manual buying book that I had to sit down and calculate the numbers. And I remember I was doing like this, it was like a sportswear program, and I don't know, it was a track pant, and I was like calculating 300,000 units of this product. And I was
Mm.
just like, wow, like this is phenomenal. And I had a small buying portfolio compared to everybody else. So, and then
Mhm.
of course, when I transitioned to working with startups, they wanted to buy 30 units of something. And
Yeah.
I'd come from this, this stack it high, kind of watch it fly kind of model. So there was a huge, I've had, that's been a huge adjustment. But
Yeah.
back to, what shaped me was definitely those mentors. And I think,
Mm.
I had a boss at the time that used to give me all the shitty jobs, like sitting there doing the manual calculation of 300,000 tracksuits across sizes and colors that was just like, would explode your brain. But
Yeah.
he would always say to me, Liz, it's character building stuff. It was always this reinforcement that, yeah, I've given you a crappy job, but this is going to build your character and it's going to build
Mm.
your resilience over time. And I
Tough
think
love.
it's tough.
It's
It was tough love, and I
yeah,
took
yeah.
it, and I kind of, I didn't like it, but I took it, and I think I excelled in that for some reason. I kind of did thrive off that kind of training or
Yep.
mentorship or conditioning, and I just built this. I call it now return on resilience. I think
Mhm.
that's what I was
Oh, I love
taught.
that.
Yeah, it's like the ROI,
Yeah.
we're all about the ROI in business. It's like, what's that return on investment? Well, you know what? If you
Mm.
keep at it, if you've got that tenacity, if you do the hard things, you've built that muscle of return on resilience, and then everything else can kind of flow on from that.
Yeah.
Because I think that with the founders that I work with, and in particular startups and those in the early days, it's hard. It really is a mindset game.
Yep.
And if they can't get that right, they don't have the right support around them. They could have all the business skills and the best creative skills in the world, but when
Yeah.
that self doubt, or should I be doing this? Am I good? And all of those things that we all experience on the daily,
Mhm. Mhm.
they can really dismantle someone in business, or on a career trajectory. So
Yeah.
I think those mentors, I was very lucky. Every promotion that I got, I didn't go for that job on my own. I had someone over my shoulder saying, Liz, apply for that job, go to the next level. You're ready. We know you're ready. We believe in you. And so that shaped me, because I just would not have achieved what I'd achieved at a very young age back then. And I certainly would not have had the bravery to go into my own wholesale business, because that comes with a lot of pressure, a lot of financial pressure, a lot of sleepless nights. You've got a lot of responsibility. So I think that, when I look back, I'm pretty proud of the younger me, because I kind of soaked up all of that mentorship. And I think I've got a little bit of each one of those mentors kind of in me. I kind of took a bit from him.
Stuck in there now.
And it's just there, and it's shaped me. And I will also say that, I think even before that experience in the workplace, I also, as a child, my dad was always about work ethic. He was always like, work hard, roll up your sleeves, and, the rewards will come from that. So I think I had that in me that served me well in that environment with those mentors, because not everyone will take on a mentor's advice. Not everyone has that ability or that desire. They might go, no, I'm doing it my way. But I was a sponge, and I was like, okay, I want to learn as much as I can, and then I'll come out the other end, and then I'll do it my way. But, during that time, it was just all about, taking it all on, testing, trying, see what worked for me. And then you kind of pave your own way, I guess, as you mature and a little bit further down the track.
Yeah, I love that. I looking back at my, my business career as well, it's been the same. It's the mentors that have been in my life that have had the most impact, and why I'm so passionate about mentorship now. It's like, you don't know what you don't know. And I do know plenty of people who are like, I don't need a mentor. I don't need that. I can do it on my own. And you can. Like, I built my business to a degree by myself, but you do hit a level, and it's that self-doubt, it's that mindset work, it's the internal work that business owners, I think a lot of the time we don't realize that that's part of the journey, but it's such a huge part of the journey, because we'll keep hitting ceilings if we don't have that cheerleader or that mentor or that person to kind of show us the way forward.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think we're so fortunate, Priscilla, that we are, working and living in a time where mentors and support systems are all around us. So you've got your business, you've got an amazing community and support network for founders and creative businesses. I'm doing the same. I reach out. I have a mindset coach at the moment helping me just to kind of level up. At every stage, I think, of our journey, there's someone there that, if we have, I think, that inspiration or just that bravery sometimes to reach out, because it's not easy when you're working with a mentor, because you've got to unpack a lot and you've got to dig deep. You've got to do the work, and that's not easy. And I always have that awareness when I'm working with a client. I'm like, I know I'm encouraging you to do something. I know it's not going to be easy, but I'm here to have your back. I'm here to support you, which is a totally different dynamic to going solo. We know how hard it is. Yes, we can, as you rightly said, we can all do it solo, but it's not much fun doing it that way.
It's isolating.
It's like, why would you when there's all of these communities and amazing people willing to share their knowledge and give their support? I think that's gold.
Yeah. And I think, just before we jumped on the podcast, we were speaking about how you're in the era of it has to be fun now. Like, you need to have the fun and the joy, because back in the day it was all about the slog and the hustle, and it wasn't fun. It wasn't joyful.
No, it wasn't, because there's a fallout from that. There's a consequence. And typically, that is an impact on your health. It can even be an impact on your mental health. So I think, again, we're very fortunate. We're working in a time now where we can do things differently, especially as entrepreneurs and owners of our own businesses. It is really on us. So we have that luxury to create our own, future. So why would we do it the hard way? Yes, you've got a frame of reference. We know what that feels like. Do we really want to bring that into our own businesses and our own world? And don't get me wrong, I wasn't like that in the beginning. I would say yes again to every client, and sometimes they were the wrong client.
Mm.
and I would actually know at the beginning, that first
Yeah.
conversation, but I'm like, no, I'm building my business. I've just got to say yes. I've got to do this project,
Yeah.
and I would pay for it in the end. Whether it was a
Yeah.
conflict of values or just personality, or that they just were not ready to be coached or consulted to. So,
Mm.
it's a whole host of things. But I think as, again, you're further down the track, it's like, what are your values? I think it does all come back to our values as business owners and founders and leaders. And
Yeah.
again, look, sometimes I do, my boundaries do get, messed with a little bit, and that's all on me.
It's the
But
responsibility we have to learn to take.
responsibility.
Hey,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a responsibility, and it's a discipline, I think, as
Mm.
well. You've got to bring the fun. You've got to be disciplined to have that fun in your world, and let it in, make space to let it in. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So talking about, I know we touched on just before about, doubt, imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
those things can really creep in for entrepreneurs. Is there a challenge that you faced where, you experienced a lot of self-doubt or, you had a lot of mindset stuff you had to move through? Do you remember like a particular experience or situation that you had where, you were really quite thrown?
Yes, yes, quite a few. I thought
Again, there's
I'd,
probably a few, but
I'd package it up into some big kind of big messages. I think if I look back, if I was to wind back the clock, I think for me, imposter syndrome showed up a lot in any public speaking kind of forum. So, as part of my career, I've had to present to boards, I've had to present at conferences. From there, it was kind of public events, industry expos, and all of those types of things. And I think whether I was speaking to 50 people or 200 people, I would always have that fear of judgment. It was just
Mm,
like, the fear of, am I going to say the right thing? Do I look okay? All those things that are going through your mind. And it can become quite, I think, obsessive and a bit
mm,
debilitating if you let it get hold of you. Now, again,
mm.
because I had that return on resilience, I kept showing up and I had that tenacity. I may not, I may have done a talk and thought, oh, that was really bad, but I would always wait for the feedback, and I never did get bad feedback, so
No.
whether people were just being kind
We're
around me or
our own
not.
worst critic most of the time, especially as
I know.
creatives, right? Yeah.
Totally, totally. So I think that's where it would show up from a work perspective. I think because I had really, I had kind of stacked my experience over the years, and I always kind of stayed in my lane. I never tried to offer
Mm,
advice that was outside of my area of expertise. So I always felt confident with the work I was doing, the work in the workplace, if I was working for someone else or in my own business or
yeah.
now in consulting. But it was more showing up, I think, publicly. And a more recent example is the podcast that I have. So we were talking before we pressed record about my podcast, which is Fashion Business Mindset, which I started in 2020, March 2020, right on the door knock of the
Right in the thick
pandemic.
of COVID.
Yeah, that's a COVID baby.
Yeah.
Not that I wanted to have a COVID baby, but that was it. That was, a result where I just started doing organic live streams actually on Facebook with amazing founders and business owners that were willing to support our startup community at the time. I was like,
Mm,
oh, our startups are freaking out. They've never been through a crisis, never mind, as we were speaking, none of us had been through a pandemic. So I really, I was great with that because it's like, oh, I'm just giving back to a community. But when we
mm,
formalized those interviews into starting my podcast, I'm like, oh, this is real. Like, I'm not a podcast host. I'm a consultant. Like, I'm in the fashion business. Who am I to be like leading these conversations? So I called it my passion project for 2 years so that I didn't have to kind of put that pressure on myself to
yeah.
say, oh, I'm the real, it's a real deal. It's a real thing. We're making progress. It's growing. So I kind
Yeah.
of downplayed it. But
Mm,
imposter syndrome was showing up, and it wasn't until I started to get feedback from the industry. So, for example, I'd go to an industry event and someone would come up to me and they go, oh, I love your podcast. Like, absolutely love. I love the way you interview. I love the questions you ask. I feel like you're asking those questions for us, because you know the industry so well. I'll think, oh, I hope she asks this. And then you ask it. And I'm like, oh my God, that's like really, that's lovely. Like that. And it's so, I think we all need that validation. Yeah. You know,
Yeah,
we can say,
yeah,
oh, we don't need validation. We don't care about other people's opinion. But I think when you're doing something so public like that, that it's lovely to get that reinforcement that you're on the right track and people are enjoying the
that's right.
content that, you know, you're creating, because it is a big job, as you know, creating this type of content. So there was
Yeah.
that validation. And then when I started to reach out to amazing founders and leaders of businesses and invite them onto the podcast, they would say, we would love to come on. We're actually
Mhm.
already a fan. And I'm putting the fan in, you know, inverted commas, because that was their words, not mine. And I'm like, oh my God, like people are actually listening. I'm like,
That's
people are listening.
amazing.
So
Yeah.
that was pretty, you know, that was really lovely as well. So, and now, like as recently as the last, you know, 6 months, I've now got PR, you know, whether it's a PR agency or a PR head of PR within a big fashion organization reaching out to me and saying, would you like to interview these amazing people? So the dynamic
Oh,
has
great.
completely shifted. So I've gone from imposter syndrome, I've got no right to be standing in front of a microphone interviewing these amazing people,
Yeah.
to now the dynamic is certainly flipped. So I think back to our point from earlier, it's consistency. Keep showing up. And I think if you believe in what you're doing, you've got to, you know, you've got
Hmm.
to have, I think, that passion for what you're doing, believe in what you're doing. And I think there's got to be something in it for everybody. So
I
as much
agree.
as, you know, podcasting is amazing for the guests. We get, you know, to showcase these amazing thought leaders and they get to tell their stories. But I know for me, like we'll get up to episode 110. I will finish 2024 on episode 110. So that's 110, because I haven't done many solo episodes. There's probably only a sprinkling, maybe five. So let's call it, you know, just over 100 people that I've spent a good
Yeah.
hour with. How much have I learnt in that time? So
Mm.
much. I've connected with amazing people. Even you and I have made an amazing connection today.
Yeah.
And it's like, how valuable is that? That's just gold. So yeah, I think pushing through the message is push through that imposter syndrome, because you never know what's the other on the other side. And
No,
it could be a game changer, life changer. So
that's
stick
right.
with it.
Yeah. And I talk with a lot of my clients about it is that showing up piece and that consistency. And we can only build confidence through evidence, right? So the more we do something, the more we get that external validation, which we shouldn't need, but we do all want.
Yeah,
And, the more we can get the feedback that we're on the right path, or that, that these opportunities start showing up for us, the more confidence we'll build within ourselves. But if we don't put ourselves out there and keep showing up, then we'll just never know.
that's right. That's right. And I
Yeah.
think, you know, having the right people around you to give you some feedback, you know, I think
Yeah.
is also, I think it's just, it is a game changer, because it gives you that confidence to take that next step, you know, say yes to
Mm.
that next hard thing.
So, what's the lesson you learned early on? And we may have already touched on this. What's a lesson you learned early on in your career that you feel has really helped you evolve as the mentor you are now? Was there another lesson that we haven't spoken about that we can share with our audience today?
Look, I think to sum up the lesson, it's probably, you know, feel that fear and do it
Mm,
anyway. I think that's been my mantra, because I'm quite an introvert. You know, I'm a natural introvert living an extrovert life at the moment. And that's not easy, because if you've got to overcome
mm,
that as step one and then do all the hard things, it's
yeah.
easy to say no. It's easy to like, oh no, you know, I don't want to do that public speaking event. I don't want to, you know, I don't want to do another podcast interview, or I'm a little bit nervous because that person is, you know, in another league. Like there's so
That's
many
how I
things.
felt about you today, to be honest.
Oh, that's so cute. Thanks, Priscilla. I'm not
That's
quite
okay.
there,
No, I'm
not quite there
completely
yet,
honest.
but
Oh, honestly.
I'm definitely on my elevation journey. So thank you.
That's okay.
But yeah, it would be so easy to say no. So
Mm,
I've had to lean into the fear, lean into the brave moments. And, you know, I can't really think of a moment in time where it's gone wrong. Definitely
mm,
self judgment. Oh my gosh, I could have been better, could have said something else, or I tripped up on my words, whatever it might be. But I've never regretted, I don't think, embracing an opportunity.
yeah.
And I'm still doing it. I'm still saying yes to the unknown. I'm still diving into, you know, like who knows how this could turn out, but I'm going to give it a try anyway, because I'm
Mhm.
going to trust myself and know that I'll do the very best that I can.
Yeah.
I also think, in addition to kind of feeling that fear and doing it anyway, it's also very important to have the right people around you. I've mentioned that a couple of times, and I think at this stage of my career, I'm very purposeful about
Mm-hmm.
who I do have around me. So, whether that's my team, the people I network with, the people I collaborate with, even down to the clients that I take on today, I'm much more purposeful about it because I know that that is what is going to, that's going to be the reward. That's what's going to have me thrive and really enjoying what I'm doing. Yes, I felt the fear, I've done it anyway, but there's a pot of gold at the end of that rainbow, which is typically results for everyone involved. I'm feeling satisfied as a consultant because I've helped a business go to the next level, or I've really supported a founder that was feeling vulnerable and feeling all of the self-doubt. And, we've been able to overcome that. And now look at them, they're on a stage or they're on a podcast, or
Isn't that the best feeling in the
it's,
entire world?
it's,
Oh,
it's
there's
the
nothing
best.
like it.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is and I'm very fortunate because I get, reports, I get updates every single week and sometimes every day from my clients. It's like, oh, we've exceeded our sales budget, or you know what, I had a podcast reach out to me and they want to interview me. Like it could be any one of many, many things.
Yeah.
But I think, when you are, yes, I've embarked into feeling the fear, but you're getting this validation. Again, it's that feedback or that validation back that, what I am doing is actually making an impact. And you used that word earlier. I think impact is a big one for me at this stage of life. And it's very much in synergy with what's going on in our industry as well. I'll touch on that shortly about, sustainability and conscious fashion. But I think that, yes, certainly not just myself, and I'm sure you might have experienced this as well, but since COVID, I think most of us have had a huge shift in
Mm.
values. And I know for me, I'm very, very mindful about what I do, very considered. And I'm also working with a lot more purpose led founders and brands and leaders in our industry, which I think is kind of nice to come full circle with my career because I started in fast fashion and
Mm-hmm.
now I've come full circle and it's all about, purpose led and making an impact.
Yeah, I love that. And I'm very much the same now as well. And you were talking about earlier, at the start of your career, you kind of just take on all the clients because you want the work, you need the money, literally
Yep.
need the money.
Yep.
And, sometimes they're not the right fit. And I'm very conscious now around, my boundaries and who I work with. And because I want them to be soul-led, purpose-driven people, humans who want to create an impact. And it's so nice when you connect with like-minded people who share the same vision. I know you do too. It because I feel like we're so much more powerful when we connect and we work together and we collaborate together. The impact we can have is so much greater.
I agree. You're totally in flow together. It's like you're on the journey together and you know
Mm,
that together you're going to be able to do so much more.
yeah.
Whereas if someone's not quite ready for that journey, there's this friction. It's friction
Mm,
and it's going to be painful. So I
yeah.
think that, having that discernment, and I think that comes with experience. It comes with
Yeah.
experience. It's not something that you have on day one. And I think you've got to
No.
go through some of those, tricky experiences to know then how to be more discerning.
Absolutely. So I know we're going to touch on this a little bit. Fashion is about innovation and breaking boundaries, but it's also deeply personal. How has your personal style and vision evolved as you've grown both professionally and personally?
I love this question because I've done a 360-degree flip. In the early days, Priscilla, I was a maximalist. I would,
Okay,
I
all
would,
of it.
I would call it because I was a retail buyer. So I was traveling. I was traveling all over the world. So I was a professional shopper. So as a retail buyer, you do development trips. And so I would go to London, I'd go to New York, I'd go to Paris, I'd go to Milan, I'd go to Amsterdam, and
Dream life if you're talking to most women.
many other. I know it sounds like an amazing life, but and it wasn't great for my credit card, let's be honest, but I had all the things. So I would come back not only with my sample bag for my job, because that was my job to buy samples for inspiration, for silhouette, for fabric, for color, all the things. But of course, it'd be one for work and then one for me. I'd be like, oh, I love that jacket too. I'm going to get one. Or, I've spotted something else in the store. So,
Mm.
and that's pretty much the life of retail buyers. That's what you do. So I had all the things. And now when I look back, I'm like actually a bit like embarrassed. I'm like how much I used to own. So I've really shifted. Like now, I don't think I wouldn't say I'm a minimalist, but I'm working towards being a minimalist. Like I'm now all about investment pieces. I will try and buy from sustainable, often Australian brands. So it's quality, not quantity. And now being a little bit older, further down the path, and kids have grown up, and, I don't have a young family anymore. Like my son's about to get married on the 23rd of November. So, it's a moment in time. So
How
we're,
exciting for you.
yeah, very, very exciting. So we're empty nesters. So, it's a little bit different. So
Mm.
I can buy that jacket that maybe is going to cost 3 times what I typically would have spent on a blazer. But I know it's an investment piece. It's been made ethically. It's amazing fabric, and it's going to last me for 10 years, if not longer.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm doing now. I'm doing this bit of a cleanse, and a reset of my style, my wardrobe. And it feels actually quite good because
Mm.
that's the space I'm working in the industry. So anyone who's in the fashion industry at the moment, if you're sitting in a conference or you're sitting at an industry event and you're hearing a thought leader speak, they're talking about conscious fashion, sustainability, circularity, ethical supply chains. And whilst that narrative was kind of always there, it was kind of bubbling under the surface. Now it's like leading the industry. So I think it
Yeah.
makes complete sense that I've had a personal kind of value shift right alongside what I'm doing in my career and the brands that I'm working with. I think, the founders that I work with are very inspiring because they're talking about sustainability and all of the amazing things they're doing. And
Yeah.
of course, by default, you're getting more of an education. You're thinking, okay, I could actually do things differently.
Yeah.
I could make the switch from buying from that brand to that brand. It's still amazing products, but look at the ethos behind this
Yeah.
organization and the amazing things that they're doing. And I'm making an impact. I'm making an impact with my credit card, and it's a win-win all round.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's certainly the journey that I'm on at the moment. And it's all about, I think, the entire fashion ecosystem, and
Yeah.
just being more considered and more conscious about, all of those touch points along the way for sure.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I've been out of the fashion industry for a while. I mean, I still
Yeah.
have some fashion clients, but I know just from hearing on radio, on TV, on media, like that is definitely the conversation that's happening now. For so long, we're in this fast fashion industry, and it is really nice to see the shift is happening, and it's happening quite quickly now, and especially Australian brands. I think we're really getting on board,
Yeah.
which is really cool to see that we're kind of leading the way as well.
Yeah, it is. It is very cool because 10 years ago, if I was having this conversation with someone, I'd be like, this is going to be like turning the Titanic. Like, how is this going to happen? But it's even surprised me how quickly, and I think again, there was a bit of a trajectory after COVID,
Mhm.
again, that value shift within organizations. And I think that that's moved a lot of brands and businesses on very, very quickly. They've probably leaped forward 10 years in the last couple of years in terms of,
Yeah.
their sustainability or responsible business journey. And I think it's a
Mm.
good thing. I think it's definitely what we needed. And I am pleasantly surprised, and I'm very happy to be part of it. It's,
Yeah.
it's very complex terrain. It is very, very complex because it is not easy. At the end of the day, we are talking about, we are making stuff, and does the world need more stuff, right?
Yes.
It doesn't. But if you're going to make more stuff, make it in a considered way where
Mhm.
you are really reducing your impact on, the planet and on people, and
Mm.
ensuring that, you're doing the least amount of harm during all of those touch points. And it all starts with the designer product, considered design and then considered sourcing and all of the things. But
Mm.
it's happening,
It
which
is,
is
yeah.
to see that manifest. I'm even like, wow, with some of
Mm.
the things that some brands are doing, it's just next level, which is, it's pretty exciting. It's an exciting space,
It
that we're
is,
going to
yeah.
see unfold over the next 5-10 years for sure.
Yeah. How cool. And you're at like the forefront helping everyone do it. How exciting.
It is cool. It is cool.
Yeah.
There's a lot to learn in a short period of time. Like that's the thing I think with, everything that we do, and especially when you're supporting others, there's so much you never stop learning, which I think is great because, that's kind of a superpower in itself.
Yeah.
When an industry is experiencing major shifts and you want to be part of that, you have got no choice to, upskill and educate yourself along the way so that you can be that support to others.
Yeah, I think that's what makes us the best leaders is when you continue to learn yourself. I don't think you can lead the next generation unless you know what they're doing and how to
Exactly.
support them, how to help them. You have to keep on the beat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you've got to be relevant and
Mm,
relatable. If you
mm,
can't, sit down with, like for me, if I can't sit down with a young creative and understand their values, their vision, what they want to do in the future, then that's on me. As a professional, it's like, okay, well, I've got this wrong. I think that, if in any kind of mentoring kind of consulting role, you've got to be able to calibrate to different people, different brands, different businesses, different values. And it's
yeah.
not easy. It's not easy
No.
because you have to be everywhere all at once. You've got to be doing all the things. And that's why I love podcasts actually, because I'm constantly listening to podcasts. I've been binge listening to yours the last few days, which I've
Oh,
loved. I've
thank
absolutely
you.
loved. But if I'm walking or driving or even cooking dinner, I've got my earpods in and I'm listening and I'm just like, how lucky are we to be able to
Mm,
tune into these conversations and learn so much? Every podcast, every hour you spend with someone, you've learned
mm,
so much. So I love that. And of course, industry events and audio books, all of the things, trend research platforms. We're very lucky. We're partnered with WGSN, which is the World Global
oh,
Style Network. So we can tap into this amazing, rich resource of what's going on globally in fashion. So I think finding ways to plug in to get access to that content and those skills is definitely crucial.
yeah. Isn't it crazy? Like I think back 10 years ago when I first started business and entrepreneurship was quite closed. Like no one really wanted to share their secrets. And now you think about all the podcasts you listen to and all the books that are available now. Everyone is now sharing, which is so incredible. It's actually, yeah, we live in a really blessed time where
It's
everyone is so much more open now about how they do things and what they've gone through. Like even us today, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, it's such an important point that you raise. I think about it all the time, Priscilla. I think about, in the day when I was a retail buyer or I had my own wholesale business, there was no way I would share who my manufacturer was, for
Mm.
example, like just one little example. Like that
I
was
know
your
that's big in the fashion world. You don't share your
yeah,
manufacturer.
that was your trade secret. That was your intellectual property. Now, you can go to the Country Road website and they've got all of their manufacturers listed, and you can click through and you can do your research. So we're living in that world of transparency, and I think it
Mm,
is collaboration over competition. That seems to be the
mm.
biggest shift I've seen in the last few years, and I love it. I just think.
We spoke about it for ourselves just before
Yeah,
we jumped on. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I love it. I'm just so pleased, and I just think it's just it's such a better world to be operating in when knowledge is shared freely because there's enough room for everybody out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I think that that's certainly been one of the keys to success in my business. We are that information network. It's like just keep it flowing, connect everybody. It's like, and that's what I kind of am, a professional problem solver. It's like, if you were to ask me a question, I'm like, Priscilla wants to do this. Who do I know that could help her on that journey? Like I'm a natural kind of matchmaker.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that, you can't do that if you're not sharing knowledge and sharing information freely yourself.
That's
And
right.
then, you tend to get that from others as well. It's
Yeah.
reciprocated.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think we could talk forever.
I know. We could.
I do have one last question for you. If you were to go back, so this is for our new entrepreneurs coming through.
Yeah.
If you were to go back to when you first started Fashion Equipped, what advice would you give to your younger self that maybe could have saved some of the stress and the heartache that you
Mm,
experienced back then?
very good question. And I could get very deep, but I'll keep it more commercial. I think, I
You
think,
can go deep if you want. It's up to you.
no, I think not everyone is your client. I think that, if I was to go back to my younger self, as I said earlier, said yes to everything, took a lot on, especially my own business. Those early days, I took a lot on, but what I did learn very quickly is not everybody is your client or your customer.
Mm,
And I think that, your business world can be a much happier place if you learn that sooner than I did.
yeah.
And even for my product based businesses at the moment, it's like niche it down, really
Mm,
focus on who your ideal audience is and serve them well. It does not mean that, your secondary market is not going to come to you. They will come to you, they will spend their money, but that's not who you're talking to. That's not your
mm,
ideal audience. So I
yeah.
think, learning that early on, you can always diversify down the track. You can have other products, for a service based business, you can have other courses, other offers
Mm,
later on. But in
yeah.
the early days, be discerning, really tune in to who you want to serve and focus on them, nurture that audience, do it really well, become known for something, your superpower in the
Mm,
industry, and then diversify from there and, build your team, and then away you go. You've got options. But
yeah,
in the early
amazing.
days, you can't serve everyone.
No. And if you could give a tip, like, because I know I get asked it all the time, but how do you find your target audience? Who do you find who you're talking to? How do you niche that down? Like, what would be a tip or a couple of tips that you could share on how to do that? Because I get that question so often myself.
Yeah, I think you've got to become a super attractor in your business. So you're a brand strategist, so you come from the brand side. I
Mm,
think of yourself, if you're a service-based business, think of yourself as a brand. Obviously, if you're a product-based business, you're thinking of yourself as a brand. But I think that is something that has worked for my business. So Fashion Equipped now, it's not Elizabeth Formosa, it's Fashion Equipped. We've built a brand. And again, I did that organically. I didn't start back in 2012 and go, oh, I'm building a brand. It was like, oh, I'm serving clients. That's what I'm
yeah.
doing. But it did grow into a
Mm,
brand and it's now known as a brand. So I think you need to show up in a way that is going to attract your ideal audience. So if I use fashion, for example,
mm,
and if I have a client who wants to serve the luxury space in fashion, and then the very first thing they do is compromise on their creative, perhaps
mm,
their photo shoot, they compromise on their photo shoot, they compromise on their website, but they're trying to sell beautiful luxury high-end product to a high-end consumer. If they don't show up in a way that's going to resonate with that consumer, it's never going to work.
yeah.
So whoever
You're speaking my talk.
yeah, you've got to become a super attractor. So, and that just
Yeah.
works for every level of industry, every kind of business, product, or service base.
Yeah.
And, if you want to be a thought leader, for example, the work that you're doing with hosting events and showing up and leading. So, if you want to be known as a thought leader, you have to lead. And
Yeah.
again, that's scary. That's like, that's feel the fear and do it anyway. But if that's what your vision is, if that's what your goal is, you have to show up in that way. So I would say, let's talk about product-based business for a moment. If you're not a brand person, work with someone like your creative agency, and we've got amazing creative agencies that we work with. I think if you don't have that expertise, go to a
Mm,
creative agency or go to a consultant like us and say, what does brand strategy even mean? How do I
yeah.
start this journey? What does my brand blueprint look like? How do I, even get there? Maybe it's in your head, and the job of that consultant or the creative agency is to tease that out and, bring that into some kind of physical format so that you've got some visuals to look at. So,
Yeah.
and again, there's so many resources out there, so many podcasts around branding and attracting your ideal audience. So I think it's got to
Mm,
start with that, because I will still to this day meet with a new client and they may have been trading for 5 years or so. And I'll say, who's your ideal customer? And they will struggle to answer me.
yeah. And that's why I brought this up because I feel like I have this conversation so often. I
Yeah.
think we get into business for us in the
Yes.
start and we
Yes.
don't really think about anyone else. We
Yeah.
just go, "Oh, we really like this product," or we see a gap in the market, or this is who I want to be, so this is who I'm going to show up as.
Yeah.
But we don't really think about anyone else.
Yes.
And when really, if we're selling a service or selling an offer or a product, it is for someone else. It's actually not for us.
That's
So it's
right.
how do we step into the mind of the person who's going to potentially buy it and become that person, like you said, lead by example and become that super attractor in that space.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think it's really undervalued. I think it's, sometimes you can speak to someone and say, you have to create your customer profiles or your avatars or your archetypes, and they'll kind of, roll their eyes. Why am I doing this? This doesn't seem relevant to my world. But then when they come out the other end and understand, oh, okay, well, actually, that is our customer. Have a look at our marketing. Our
Mm,
marketing is actually not speaking to that customer right now, and we're wondering why we're not attracting the ideal customer.
yeah.
So sometimes until you actually go through the motion, go through the process, and maybe you are guided by someone like us to do that, you may not have that aha moment, and that could be detrimental to your business if you're sitting there thinking, why aren't I growing? Why aren't I scaling? Why
Mm,
why does everyone that comes to my business say, oh, you're too expensive? Because that is actually not your customer. You're not
yeah.
attracting the customer that has, the appreciation for what you're creating and is willing to spend their money on it. So yeah,
Yeah.
become that super attractor.
I love that. And thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom and knowledge with us today. I know that we will be connecting more and doing more together. And I really look forward to how that evolves and what that looks like. But thank you so much, Liz, for joining me today and joining our Inspired Founders Network. I know everyone's going to get a lot out of this. So thank you so much for joining today.
Thank you, Priscilla. Thank you for having me, and I absolutely love your work, and keep it
Thank
up.
you.
Can't wait to collaborate in the future.
Thank you so much for tuning into this inspirational story. Lucky for you, the inspo doesn't stop here. We have an Inspired Founders Facebook community, a space created just for you to learn, listen, and ask questions from our inspired founders themselves. This unique community is designed to uplift and motivate you to take actions on your own stories and dreams. You'll find the link within our show notes. We can't wait to see you in there.
This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose.